Okay. Well, thank you so much for taking the time, Peter. This is Peter Magic with Janoshik Analytical. And to be honest, I've been wanting to do this interview for a long time. I think I reached out maybe 4 or 5 months ago, and it just never worked out timing wise. But this whole kind of research space and like peptide space has fascinated me, especially on the like testing end of it, just because, everything you guys are doing, there's a bunch of third-party testing labs popping up in the US. And you're kind of known as the gold standard with the whole peptide space because you've been doing it forever, but not a lot of people know that story. I've listened to your past interviews, but I'm sure a lot of people have heard of Janishik, just didn't know how it started. So if you want to give a little bit of the background of how you got into it, I think it's a fascinating story.
Well, it's over 15 years now, I believe. I was 17 and I'm 32, so that sort of adds up to that. And well, I was back then I was just a scrawny kid at 16, 15, 16. I was just a scrawny kid, and I had a lot of trouble with my knees and my back.
Yeah.
And I went to rehabs and stuff like that, and nothing seemed to work well enough. I had some, hyaluronic acid injection into my knees, and it didn't really help either. So, and then I read this book by Mark Rippetoe, Starting Strength. It's pretty well known in the
Okay. Yeah.
weightlifting community. And he had this notion that healthy young males shouldn't fuck around with the rehabs designed for 80-year-old people.
Yeah.
So I got into weightlifting, or lifting weights rather, and it sort of worked well for me. But I also got into the community. I got my information from Fortune Fitness Board, and that one is pretty famous for, well, a lot of talk of anabolic steroid use, and I made a lot of friends, great friends over there, and most of them were using anabolic steroids, and they had no
Yeah.
way to figure out what they're actually buying from the internet. And as they say on the 4chan, only a fool would take anything written on the internet as granted. So, but they had no way to actually check what they're getting. But I figured
Right.
it cannot be that difficult. So I talked with friends at the university who
Hmm.
were able whether they're able to do that. And we sort of put something together, and it worked out to my surprise because I was like talking to my friend from
Yeah.
Serbia who was a great looking bodybuilder, and he was like, okay, so I got this stuff but I have no idea what's really in there. And okay, I can test it for you. And he's like, no shit, mate, you can't. Yes, I can, definitely, it's no problem. I had no idea whether it didn't work out, but once I promised, I had a
Yeah.
strong motivation to make it work. And then another friend asked me to test something for me, and I just took, the beer money. Like there were some expenses,
Right. How old were you
and
at
the
this time?
money left. Oh, 17.
17. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So all I got from that was some beer money for me and a
Yeah.
friend who helped with setting the thing up at the university. And well, then after a while, the people who were not my friends started reaching
Hmm.
out. Like, they heard that I can do this, and they were like, "Okay, can you do this for me?" And I was like, "Okay, we might want to get a bit more than beer money from this one."
Right.
As I don't really even know these people. I mean, I gladly help them, but
Yeah.
it's gotta be worth my time.
Right.
And there was this guy, like he was pretty famous in the community back then. He was called Fat Lifts,
Okay.
and he commented like our my pricing was still rather cheap. It was $60 a
Yeah.
sample back then, and he commented that like we're pretty cheap over here in Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
He made some not so flattering uh, comment about that.
Yeah.
And I was okay, so it's gonna be 100 for you.
Right. Right. So you just
And
up the prices on them.
yeah, 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 yeah. And that's the
That's
moment
awesome.
when it started to make some sense financially. Like it was not my main business for a while. I was doing
Mm.
programming. I did. I helped to work on. I studied med school, so
Yeah.
I did some projects like international dictionary, like Czech, Slovak, English, and Latin. We
Okay.
got actually some. We got some grants for that, and I did a lot of stuff. I had my fingers in many pies, but at some point, the volume of this testing it started increasing, and I had to choose whether I want to focus on the medicine or my
Hmm.
other businesses, programming. It was a pretty good gig for me back at the time,
Yeah.
or this one, and I feel this one is the most unique, and I figured it might be the easiest to scale.
Right.
So I chose this as my main business, and the rest is history.
Yeah. No, that's so what was the testing looking like at that time for whatever you were testing for these people? Was it just identifying what it was? Was it the actual like net content of it for these, I'm assuming they're like anabolics or either whatever you were doing at the time. What did that look like in the beginning?
While early 2012 or 13, it's been only anabolics at the
Right.
beginning, and it was the idea and the concentration or the amount. And well, it worked out like I got a sample, I dealt with logistics and everything, and then I brought it into a lab.
Hmm.
And then it got tested without much participation from me.
Okay.
But we ran into some issues, like the other party took the beer money a bit too seriously.
Yeah.
So there were some delays due to inability to proceed due to high alcohol in blood content.
Yeah, yeah. Right.
And while the other party, it started to be become unreliable.
Hmm.
So I actually did save the beer money up
Yeah.
for a while. And then at some point, I bought my own HPLC. And I
Gotcha.
had it set up in my dorm room. Like I was living in a
Wow.
dorm.
Yeah.
And next to my bed, I had the lab for a while. I had
Hmm.
it all there.
Do you remember how
And
much
it
that
was,
cost you as in your dorm room, that HPLC, the first one?
I'm not entirely sure, but it might have been something like six to $7,000.
Wow.
Mm,
Was the money covering
maybe
that at the time? Like, were you making enough where you kind of saw that money come back within a reasonable amount of time, or
I had it saved, and yeah,
okay.
it did return in a reasonable amount of time. But well, of course, dollar was a lot
Yeah,
more back then than it is now.
right.
What? But the HPLC I had, now we have this nice quiet pumps and everything. The one I bought was 20 years old or more, even
Right.
back then, and it had these huge pumping heads. It was not the analytical, the small one,
Mhm.
but it had the massive heads, like it was ready to pump a lot of liquid. And when it worked, it was like
Right. Right.
it made sound like this, and it was slow. Like right now, we can run an analysis, a lot of analysis in 2 to 5 minutes,
Mhm.
but back then it was 20 because the resolution was not so great, so you had to make it longer and everything.
Right.
So, and I didn't have the, and just turning it on took hours. So
Wow.
basically, once you turn it on, you want to test everything in one.
Everything
So
at
at
once.
the weekends, I had the machine running for 40 hours straight next to my bed.
Yep.
It not only drove me crazy. There was a room next to me, like
Right.
there was a wall, but
Yeah.
it was a cardboard wall. And they're like, okay, can you please make it shut up, Peter? And I'm so sorry, not for 30 more hours.
Right. And are you're in med school at this time, kind of studying that? What's the direction going? I know you kind of levered into this over like programming and stuff, but what is the overall, like in your life period, what are you kind of working towards at this point, or is that the main thing?
Well, back then I was mostly focusing on the med school. The testing
Mhm.
was just that. And if you're asking about right now, I'm out of medicine completely.
This is the
I
yeah,
cannot practice anymore because I've been
right.
out for so long,
Right.
and it's not really making much sense
Oh,
over here. The
100%.
wages.
Yeah.
Yeah, the wages for doctors after school they're like $2,000 a month,
Yep.
and maybe two and a half.
Hmm.
And after you get the I'm not sure how it's translated into English, but after a couple of years of practice, then you have another exam, and if you
Yeah.
pass that, you can do a lot, pretty much everything by yourself.
Right.
And after that, it's like $5,000 to $7,000 over here a month,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
which is roughly as much as we made since the start of this interview. So,
Yeah, yeah. So let's fast forward to today because, I've kind of seen, all these research companies, peptide companies, like when did that transition into, I'm assuming, like I've seen your past interviews, the majority of your business is from peptides, I'm assuming. And how did that, if you could give kind of the timeline, I'm assuming like, when the GLPs became popular, like how that kind of transitioned into peptides, and then if you could get into like how many samples you're doing a day at this point.
well, we did peptides since the start, like
Right.
2013 to 14. I tested a peptide here and there.
Hmm.
We did a lot of human growth hormone testing, which technically is a peptide.
Yeah.
But with the exception of that, I saw a couple of peptide samples here and there. The first GLP-1 was actually the original GLP-1 hormone,
Yep.
not the derivative like the ones we see now, but it
Right.
must have been like 2016 or 17.
Yeah.
I was already in contact with a lot of people who did a lot of interesting research into this stuff. Like, there was a guy in 2016 who figured out that the GLPs, if they could work just a bit longer, it will be a huge deal. And we tested
Yeah.
that for him. But the real boom started in 2020s. Mm,
Yeah.
when the Ozempic, but the semaglutide, it became a big thing.
Hmm.
And we already had it tested. We had the methods developed, and we were the first one. And already we were a decade in the business. So people knew
Yeah.
us.
Yep.
The logistic channels, like the same people selling and making semaglutide in China, are the people
Hmm.
who know us for years already.
Right.
So we were the natural first choice for testing it. And with that, the other GLPs like tirzepatide and retatrutide, uh, they started coming. And in the early 20s, the anabolics were still like 80% of our business,
Hmm.
anabolic steroids. But right now, it's quite the opposite. The 80% of our business is the peptide testing,
Yeah.
and roughly less than 20% is the anabolic steroids. We,
Yep.
like, for example, yesterday we received roughly 550 samples
Wow.
just yesterday, a single day.
Yeah. And how many do you go through a day to actually, because obviously there's different durations for the testing, but just in general, like how many are you testing per day? I know they go through, various timelines.
We do test between 200 to 600 samples a day.
Wow.
Uh, yeah, so there's almost 40 people working at the company right now.
40.
You know,
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, just unpacking the packages. Just imagine 100 packages.
Hmm.
Just labeling them, unpacking and everything. It's many, many hours of work. So
Yeah. So what does that look like from, because you obviously have, research companies sending you samples, you have independent researchers like sending you samples, just people wanting to get stuff. I don't know, what the breakdown is, but how does that typically work if, let's just say I wanted to send something in, get it tested for we'll say the base is like, I just want to identify it. I want to see the percentage purity and the net content. What does that cost versus the full panel, which I'm considering something like endotoxins, sterility, heavy metals, plus, that full panel.
yeah, well, the GLP ones are, I believe, $300 a test for the basic test,
Right.
which tells you which one it is and how much of it there is, and what is the peptide purity of it. I
Okay.
think that's the single best value test there is.
Yes.
These three information are the most valuable ones
Yeah.
for the client. And then it depends on what all you want to add.
Right.
I'm gonna be honest, I don't remember the prices off the top of my head. I'm gonna
It's
have
okay.
I need to check my own eShop.
Right.
online, and there I see the various add-ons like you can check for the raw data, whether you want to see the machine output or not.
Yeah.
A lot of people are complaining that we're not doing that automatically. Many other labs are,
Hmm.
but you have to understand that this data, the raw data, without the context,
Right.
they're completely useless. Like it's nice to see some graph,
Yeah.
but I can make it show anything I want, anything I
Sure.
want it to show. And we've got many of these labs. They're just using the same graph all over again, just changing up the numbers.
Yeah.
I've got a couple of fake labs over the years that just
Right.
downloaded some graphs from the internet, and I was
Yeah.
able to find, like, okay, you got it, but you got it from this publication.
And they're
So
just slapping that on their COAs. That's, I think, is going to be an issue right now is, because this peptide craze is so popular. You're seeing all these brand new labs pop up with no face behind it or no credibility. And, like you said, you're going to catch these people. And I think one of the things you guys did from day, I don't know how long your public COA database has been live with that stuff, but, being able to actually go with the QR code or the little number that you guys have to actually verify. I always tell people you should, go check the actual lab's website and make sure those match up because it's very easy to Photoshop, especially now with AI. You can kind of make it look like whatever you want it to.
yeah, exactly. I can try checking actually. Uh, I My verification database is online since 2016, it
Okay.
appears.
Wow.
So it's been around a while.
Yeah. That's
And yeah, with,
that's
with the
amazing.
AI, we've seen AI generated fake reports of ours.
Right.
Many of the labs, like now you can make a website for a testing lab in a
Mhm.
minute with ChatGPT, and many of the people are doing that.
Right.
Uh, Basically, I urge people to at least check the testing labs they're seeing. Like half of
Yes.
them doesn't even have the required public information there. Like you can find out their company registration number, you can find nothing, and people are trusting these
Yeah.
companies for stuff. Or you find out that they claim to be the biggest lab in the field, and then you find out they employ 1.5 people,
Right.
and their lab is some nail salon or something like that.
Right.
So I just hope that people are sensible enough to check
It's
this
actually
information.
no, for sure. What are some like basic, I guess this is more from the outside. What are some like basic requirements to kind of like establish the lab? I know it's different in every area compared like US wise based labs versus like what were the initial things you had to get set up to get that lab accredited or be able to intake all these like peptides and not, because you have anabolics coming in, you have peptides coming in. Like what do you have to have in place in order to intake all those, legally, I guess?
Well, we have a license for all this stuff because in Czechia,
Hmm.
the peptides, all of the peptides, they're treated the same as anabolic steroids,
Yeah.
and we're not only dealing with a large amount of them, we're also importing them from over the border. So that's an insane amount of paperwork. We fill in tens of thousands of pages of paperwork.
Yeah.
Like the administrative part of the company is as big, if not bigger, than the actual lab part of the company.
Hmm.
Just dealing with the clients and with the bureaucracy of importing huge amounts of scheduled stuff. It's all scheduled here in
Yeah.
Czechia. So we do that. And regarding accreditation, we have none. There is no accreditation that actually exists for testing
Right.
this sort of stuff obtained from gray or black markets.
Yeah.
And if there are some of the labs which do this and they're like touting they have an accreditation, and then you check the accreditation, it's like, okay, but they're accredited for testing soil samples.
Right.
So it
It's
doesn't
not for the
really
research or gray market space whatsoever. It's just an accreditation
yeah,
they have from something else and it really doesn't apply
yeah.
100%.
There's no accreditation for testing user provided samples like this.
Yeah.
I checked, like, the accreditation is not difficult to acquire. It costs a couple of thousands of dollars mm, to deal with the paperwork, and that's it. It's
Yeah.
not difficult to get a piece of paper, but for our business, it's completely useless, and it's actually quite restraining.
Yeah.
Because if you want to do something, do accreditation, you are limited with the way you can improve the processes on the run.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we never got one. So
That makes sense.
the only paperwork we have is to deal with this stuff legally, which
Yeah.
is what most of the labs don't even have. Like, for example, human growth hormone is also a scheduled one
Yeah.
in the US, and none of the labs that do test it, for example, do have the paperwork for that.
Right.
But nobody's really caring too much until it causes issues.
Right. Go ahead. Because I've heard a lot of companies send out either they can't do like HCG, they can't like test for that. So they'll send like HCG or, I've heard HCH. Even a lot of companies send you guys bacteriostatic water to test for like pH and benzyl alcohol content because some labs here can't do that. Have you seen any uptick? I don't know if this is a little segue. Have you seen, and it's a big thing in the US right now, Amazon no longer carries like their bacteriostatic water. It wasn't third party tested anyways, but it got completely wiped out. Have you seen any uptick in like companies sending those to you, or do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, we do. We do see a lot more BAC water samples than we did before.
Right.
And it's usually just sterile water that somebody added the benzyl alcohol into. But we're also seeing just sterile water being sold as BAC water.
Right.
I and the amount of the benzyl alcohol, they vary quite a lot, actually.
Yes.
It can be relatively like 30% variance, which is quite huge.
It's a
On the
lot. Yeah.
absolute, yeah, on the absolute amount, it's not that much. It's 9 point something milligrams supposed to be.
Yeah.
And if that's 10 something, it doesn't seem that much to people, but relatively, it's quite a difference.
Hmm.
And the benzyl alcohol, it can also degrade over time.
Yeah.
We had a nice bottle of pure benzyl alcohol here for a decade, and once we tested it, it was a lot less pure than we assumed it to be. And yeah,
Okay.
we've seen a
Yeah.
lot of that. And with the ACG, I'm not sure it's pretty difficult to test.
Yeah.
So most of companies are steering away from that.
Yeah. For
But
it,
we do have,
it
yeah.
Sorry, in regards to that, the bacteriostatic water, have you seen? I know you kind of debunked this on one of your other interviews. A lot of people said, "Oh, don't shake your peptides or whatever because they'll degrade or they kind of break their structure," which obviously I know the position on, but the viewers might not know. But I think personally, like bacteriostatic water, when either the benzyl alcohol isn't there, or have you seen a lot of variance in the pH of the benzyl alcohol or of the bacteriostatic water? Because typically that is one of the issues with like gelling occurring when you like reconstitute the peptide or the solution going cloudy. Have you seen any issues with that with the samples that you're getting?
Yeah, we do because for the testing, we're actually using the ultra pure water.
Hmm.
And if the peptide has this inherent property that makes it gel, like AOD,
Right.
then it just gels. Like you can add some excipients into the vial
Yeah.
that can stop it, or you can dilute it. But the BAC water is not always helping. It does help to increase the solubility a bit.
Okay.
And we can do that on client request, but by default, we're always testing with the ultra pure water, as it should, in my opinion, be.
Okay.
And we do see a lot of cloudy peptides. Not as many now as we did before, but just a couple days ago, we had
Yeah.
retatrutide, and
Yeah. Yeah.
we tried to dissolve. We filled the vial with the full 3 milliliters of water,
Yeah.
and it was so cloudy that when we filtered it, because we need to filter the samples before we test it,
Yeah.
otherwise the particles would clog up the machines. They're pretty sensitive to that.
Gotcha.
And if it's not dissolving, then it's quite likely not absorbing anyway. So the result is quite valid for the client.
Okay.
And out of the, I think it was supposed to be like or 30 milligrams,
Yeah.
and we tested like the test result was like 7 in it.
Wow.
So when we also tested the unfiltered amount,
Yeah.
like not in the HPLC, but we have also a CNHS combustion analysis for organics, and
Okay.
we tested the undissolved cloudy part, and it
Yeah.
was like 24 milligrams. So a major part, the majority of the peptide just didn't dissolve.
Right.
And as you know, it shouldn't be like that. Like 30
Yeah.
milligrams of retatrutide should dissolve normally in 3
Right.
milliliters of water. So there was something wrong with the manufacturing process that made it like that. With
Okay.
AOD,
Yeah.
it's intrinsic property of the
Hmm.
compound that it tends to gel, but if other stuff gels
Right.
or well is cloudy, then there's something wrong with it.
Right.
It
So
the
if a
yeah
researcher reconstitutes a peptide and the majority of it's cloudy, they would probably throw that. You should probably throw that away at that point, right?
yeah that's the general advice. Like every
Yeah.
pharmaceutical, like for peptide for injection, like if this is cloudy, just throw it away.
Yeah.
That's the general instruction.
Yeah.
You don't know what exactly caused it. You don't know whether or how it will work. It just not worth the risk, in my opinion,
For sure.
because the malformed, denatured, or whatever peptide, it might cause an immune reaction unnecessarily. Like
Right.
nothing that would probably, most likely, it won't endanger you, but still not something you
Not worth the risk.
want to deal
One.
with. Yeah.
100%. In that regard to kind of, just dissolving the peptides, yeah, I was curious. You kind of answered the question of you guys use bacteriostatic water when you do, the net content, net purity for this stuff, but you said that's ultra pure water you guys use. Like what would that be comparable to? Like, could anyone on the market get that, or is that something specifically that only goes to lab? Is that different than sterile water?
Well, we're buying that in 2.5 liter jugs because we
Gotcha.
use
A ton
hundreds
of
of
it.
liters of it every month. Yeah. Not only for dissolving the samples, but also to run the machines.
Hmm.
But it's quite comparable to pure sterile water for
Okay.
injection.
Gotcha.
Uh, that's the point of both.
Yeah. And then I think you mentioned in other interview, but it's in kind of like Europe and like other areas, there's not much bacteriostatic water available, correct? It's mostly like sterile water that a lot of people are using for
Oh,
reconstitution.
oh, there's no BAC water or
Wow.
bacteriostatic water available over here, as far as I can tell. It's just not used. I think they are pharmaceutical agency. I'm not 100% on this, but I think
Yeah.
they evaluate and the benefits it provided compared to the negatives,
Right.
which are the degradation of the benzyl alcohol and local reactions. Uh, it's it's just turned out to be not worth it.
Just
So
negligible.
they just kept using either the saline
Okay.
or the sterile water
The
for
sterile water.
injection.
Okay.
Yeah.
So kind of in regards to that. So do researchers there still kind of go off that 28-day like guideline, like 28 days kind of reconstitute it and then toss the peptide, or how does that work with like sterile water? I know the general guidelines are with kind of we have Hospira here, so it's like, the Pfizer version of, the bacteriostatic
Yeah.
water. The general guidelines are like 28 days after opening, toss it kind of thing. What does that look like over in Europe with that sterile water?
While usually, as far as I can tell, it's you open it and within a day
Yeah.
you throw it out.
Okay.
But I have this 100 milliliter sterile water container,
Yeah.
like multi-use. I've had it for between 8 to 12 years.
Okay.
And the water inside is still sterile. Like we ran a test this year
Yeah.
because I'm still using it for when my wife she has contact lenses, and
Yeah.
when she runs out of solution, we just use the sterile water.
Okay.
Or it might be saline. I'm not 100% off the top of my head, but
Okay.
it's one of those. And it's roughly a decade, and the water is still sterile.
Yeah.
So everyone can take whatever they want from these
Right.
informations.
Right. No, for sure.
But um,
Yeah.
if we're just keeping, I'm just keeping, if you're just putting the sterile needle in there, that's
Mhm.
not dirty, contaminated, there's nothing to introduce the bacteria. And
Right.
even if there are some, then they don't have much to live on in a properly sealed water container. Like nothing can feed just off water.
Okay.
They need some
That
they need some dirt to feed on.
Yeah, that makes sense. So if we could backtrack a little bit to the testing, for those extra ones, like you said, you kind of went over it when you talked about the GLPs for, this most simple testing for that $300,
Yeah.
which was, the net content, net purity, and identification. Off those other three, we don't have to go into cost if you don't have it, but off those
Oh,
like
I have it
three,
open right here.
okay, yeah. So what would that full like panel cost if you could go one by one, kind of to add those on?
Well, you can add what is I will go by the most value, what I believe to be the most value.
Okay.
You
Yeah.
can do variance testing, like if you're sending the multiple vials of the same batch,
Yes.
you can send more than one vial, which is heavily discounted. Like it's right now it's under our costs to test.
Yeah.
So you send four vials of the same thing, and for the extra vials, you can send three extra vials at a
Yep.
discounted rate, and you're paying just $60 for each one of them. So you can have four
Okay.
vials tested for $480,
Yeah.
and it's great to know whether all your vials are dosed the same. Whether
Right.
there's what we saw often, especially in the beginning of the peptide boom. You had one vial that was 7 milligrams and the other one was 13.
Yes.
Uh, there was a huge variance. So this is a very valuable test.
Right. We call that like typically it's known as like conformity for most stuff. It's just like conformity you send in, three of the same batch. Like what do you think is because we see the numbers jump around a lot and a lot of times like what kind of I'll suggest to people or in general it's kind of you take the average of those three. Do you agree with that? You just kind of like add those up and take the average and that's kind of you can kind of take a best guess that that's what the milligram amount is if you just kind of add those up and divide by three for conformity or how would you go about that?
Oh well, we just let the client know the result for each of the vials,
Yeah.
and they can deliver that however they wish to.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Is there any time how often does that come back weird where like normally they're using, fillers that are like a machine is like kind of filling it so it's not off by too much. But do you see like huge jumps there where something is like a 13 and something's like a 7?
Not anymore, not anymore.
Okay.
We do see huge jumps. Like, it's not around much anymore. But we saw like the vials when did they were not lyophilized. They were not a nice packs like this, but
Right.
it was just someone putting the powder into a vial with a little
Yeah.
spoon, which is quite unfortunate. It really shouldn't be done like that.
Right.
That's where a lot of issues came from.
Mhm.
But we also saw a vendor which was doing exactly this, and they were achieving a surprising accuracy of the
Okay.
dosage
Yeah.
like that. Whoever was doing that must have had the patience of a god
Right.
because I can't
Steady hands
imagine
for
anyone.
sure.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
It's crazy.
But then sometimes we see like a vendor, they claim that something is the single batch. The vials, they look all the
Right.
same, but you can tell that one guy he sends three vials, the other guy sends three vials of the same. They have a group testing sort of thing,
Right.
and the vials from the other guy they test different from the other three, but exactly the same, like with very little variety. So you
Yeah.
can tell that they just look the same. It's 100% not the same batch,
Right. It could
or
be same
even
cap and crimp color, but like same cap, same
yeah.
crimp, identically. Like looking at it, you couldn't tell a difference, but obviously something was
Yeah,
off batch wise. Yeah.
And it does happen like, let's say it's not unusual to see that, but it might be
Right.
one out of a 50 tests like this,
Okay.
which means we're seeing it quite often due to the sheer volume of
Yeah.
the testing. And sometimes we even see stuff like the vials look the same, the vendor sold them as the same batch,
Right.
but they're actually even a different compound at a different dose. We
Yeah.
that's a much more rare occasion, but
Right.
we see that here and there too.
Yeah.
So the variance testing is definitely a good buy.
Yeah. So that's the
Then there,
next one you would add on, like right after.
yeah,
If you're doing the basic, add that one on first, and then after that, what would it be?
yeah. I mean, we're losing money on this, so obviously
Right.
it's good value test.
Yeah. Yeah.
The ones we make money on, it's like the sterility testing.
Right.
It's good to have it.
Yeah.
It's much less value than the previous tests,
Right.
but sometimes we see stuff so contaminated with bacteria it just grows the next day. We have these petri dishes, and when the test is
Yeah.
positive, we always take a picture for the client to see what
Yeah.
all grew on there.
I've seen them. Yeah.
Uh, we're not
Yeah.
we're not usually doing the identification of the bacteria that grew or the molds
Mhm.
that grew, but we can tell from experience pretty well already.
Right.
It's not dangerous. It's usually not dangerous microbes. It's just the ever-present stuff.
Right.
There is, but it's still not something you wish to inject a lot. And
Right.
we
I
need
kind
extra
of
vials for this.
Yeah, so that's what I was gonna say too. So like kind of the endotoxins, I just wanted to go a little bit deeper. How many days do you test for the sterility? Like I know there's some PCR testing, there's some like in the US we have like USP 61, USP 71. So that's like a 5 day or a 14-day sterility. How long do you typically let the bacteria grow for if it's present?
Oh, if it's present, the moment something
Right,
grows on there, you can fail it.
right.
But if nothing grows, you have to wait for 14 days to
14 full
to claim
days.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, we do that. We do that.
Okay. Yeah. Because I'm
Uh,
seeing a lot more labs offer sterility testing, but it's the rapid sterility. So it's like, they'll only wait 24 hours or 5 days. They call it bioburdens. That's just like the testing, but I'm pretty sure the injectable standard is the full 14 days, like you mentioned.
yeah, well, and then you ask these labs to show you their laminar flow hood for a sterile walk, and they can't.
Yeah.
A lot of labs in this field are, well, they saw the quick buck that the testing is, that there are a lot of people are testing in this, and they're just in for the money.
Yeah.
And once the people started asking them to see their setups for sterility,
Mhm.
I haven't seen many labs present them actually. We have this laminar flow hood that's 3 meters wide
Yeah.
that almost broke our backs because we had to
Wow.
bring it in hand because it couldn't fit anywhere.
Yeah.
It's like 300 kilos, and every man from the company had to help. It almost crushed me on the stairs.
Yeah.
It's huge and heavy.
From that
So,
aspect before we get to like heavy metals and I'm curious too because like labs in general there's like just the transparency side of it. I've never seen like a video, like I've seen some videos in like laboratory, like kind of university labs of like people recording the process or just like going through it. Have you guys ever released anything like that, or you see labs like that, or is that something that would kind of go against like regulations?
oh, we had a lot of people visit actually.
Okay.
We had a lot of clients and people from the group tests. When
Yeah.
someone has their way around Prague, we are not that far from the international airport or the Prague center. It's like 20-minute Uber ride
Oh wow.
from the Prague center over here. We had a guy visit just 10 or 12 days ago,
Wow.
and we showed him around a little bit. He took a lot of pictures, so it's no problem for us. We're quite used to it. It just there's a lot of people, a lot of groups that are spending
Right.
considerable money with us.
Right.
So it's just a common courtesy when someone from the group show
Wants to
interest
come see
to
it.
see.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And we have the opportunity to show them, and we like to do that, so the people can actually see that we're not working in a nail salon or some basement.
Right.
We have, I think one. 1,500 of square meters
Yeah.
facility. I'm gonna check. It's almost 17,000 square feet
Wow.
facility over here.
Yeah.
So we like to proudly show that around that.
Yeah, no, that's something I was interested in because like I said, from the transparency side, I don't see, a lot of labs won't let people visit. Especially like the US ones are very reserved about that stuff. And it begs the question, what's actually legit? So that's good to know that, people have been there and you guys are open to that.
Yeah, well, we've seen the labs offer the test. They don't have the equipment for,
Right.
so
Right. Right. So that's something that maybe, some of the companies testing with them should push on a little bit to kind of see that equipment and kind of make a decision there.
yeah. The people definitely should want to see what the basic requirement. Like I said, if you cannot even see the company registration number, then how can you hold them accountable for
Yeah.
whether they're cheating the numbers or anything like that?
Yeah.
And I like to show my employees to people to see who's actually doing the tests. Like they're
Right.
very reliable and great.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, that's refreshing to hear because like I said, there's a lot of, gray market research, all the stuff. There's a lot of transparency that's not there. So seeing that's quite refreshing for even the testing side. Because I always say, I get it for the companies and stuff like that, but the testing side, a lot of these people don't, there's no face behind it or they're not willing to kind of open up and show stuff. So that's pretty cool. And then I guess going on to that last part, for heavy metals, what is that to add to kind of the testing panel? And do you see like any, I guess you can say endotoxins or sterility, endotoxins, sterility, or heavy metals if you see value in any of them kind of consistently.
while we do the endotoxins in the same laminar flow hood as sterility. We clean
Yeah.
it between the tests, of course. But for the endotoxin, w- well, I always kept telling people like it's not really that useful test because the endotoxin is an issue in E. coli bacteria. They're gram-negative bacteria,
Yes.
and the endotoxin is part of their cell wall. And when you have peptides, for example, human growth hormone,
Hmm.
they're big peptides. They're not possible to make
Right.
with the solid phase synthesis, solid state synthesis, whatever it's called. The way that's the cheap way to manufacture peptides because it has a limit on the length of peptide. So you need to
Yeah.
make it by bioengineering the E. coli or other cell. And if you use E. coli, then you need to, there's a whole lot of endotoxin from the sheer fact that it's grown in the bacteria.
Right.
So you need to get rid of it before it can be used. So there, the risk of endotoxin content that can be harmful is that the risk is there.
Okay.
But with the peptides made on the solid phase, with the synthetic peptides, uh, this risk it's not there. The E. coli is not made in the E. coli, so there's no
Yeah.
primary source that's
Okay.
inherent to the process. So, in my opinion, I always told people that the endotoxin is not very useful test. The
Okay.
people they want it, we offer it much cheaper than our competitors, and but we're gonna change that pretty
Right.
soon because we made some calculations and we figured out we're losing money on that one too.
Right.
But we never actually noticed. But
Right.
uh, just recently uh, we saw some tests that turned out extremely high on endotoxin for tirzepatide.
I saw that one.
So
I saw that one from your
yeah,
guys' lab. It kind of made rounds everywhere.
and yeah, and it's quite worrisome.
Yeah.
Like we had people like one came terribly back terribly, so the people sent in more and more samples from that batch,
Yeah.
and it was terrible and terrible and terrible and terrible.
Mhm.
So we're getting consistently the most terrifying results we ever gotten from that same batch.
Right.
So apparently there's something that can go really terribly wrong somewhere.
Right. Something in
Uh,
the
I,
manufacturing process, something got
yeah,
introduced and it was pretty scary for sure.
Yeah, that might be it. They also sent a sample to other labs,
Yeah.
which had results also high, but our result had been roughly about 2,000 endotoxin units in the vial, and their result had been roughly 55 or something like that.
Right.
But
And what's the
uh,
baseline to pass that test for endotoxins?
that's actually not a simple question
Right.
because the endotoxin limits are based on the subject and the dose, not
Yeah.
the amount in the vial. So,
Okay.
for example, if you have 2 milligram tirzepatide vial, which
Okay.
I haven't seen in a while, but there was some in the beginning,
Yeah.
and 100 milligram tirzepatide vial, the endotoxin can be 50 times higher in the higher dosed one,
Gotcha.
because the limit is based on how much you can inject per hour of
Okay.
endotoxin and also on the subject body weight. So a 100 kilo man like me can use the product with 10 times more endotoxins than a 10 kilos weight kit.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. I don't think anybody's actually explained that portion of endotoxins. People thinks it's a simple pass fail and you can't go above a certain limit. So,
Yeah, we've had people requesting us to like, okay, so is that a pass or fail? Well, we cannot just say that. It's not working like that.
right. So it just shows kind of the amount of whatever you measured for the thing. It doesn't say like pass fail. I know a lot of labs do a pass fail of from what I've seen, but that's very good to know. And
Yeah,
then
that's quite worrisome too.
right. That is, we're putting arbitrary limits on it and then saying pass fail. That is worrisome for sure. And then so the last one, heavy metals on that one. So I guess yeah, I guess if you could give the price for heavy metals and then the final ranking of everything, if we just go back through it of how you would order them in importance.
Wow. The heavy metals, we still haven't had a worrisome result with the peptide.
Okay.
So the endotoxin changed a bit, just last week. But the heavy
Yeah.
metals, well, they're not anywhere in the process of manufacture, so it ha would
Right.
have to be another random contamination. We try to keep the test cheap
Yeah.
because the more tests we run of heavy metals, the cheaper it is for us too.
Yeah.
So we try to find a balance of making it affordable because people kept asking for it, even if I was like, okay, but I don't really think that's an issue. We have
Right.
seen some pharmaceuticals and especially, natural extracts,
Yeah.
where the heavy metals were actually reaching worrisome limits, like it wouldn't pass
Mhm.
to get into the regular market, but not with peptides. It's not a major issue.
Okay.
But some people they just want everything tested to be
I
sure,
I've
so it's
seen
there.
I've seen like now there's this kind of trend. It's like 7x testing. So that'd be all the ones we talked about with like conformity kind of added in. So it's so kind of in order if I got your ranking right, we have kind of, the basic test you talked about with the three, the net purity, net content, and the identification. That's the one that should be the baseline, in my opinion, for everything.
Yeah, it
Uh,
is. You cannot order the
yeah.
you can order the additional services
Right.
separately, but it's a lot more hoops than just ordering the basic test.
Right. And then so then
The
after that you do the conformity, so sending in like the 3 vials per batch, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then yeah,
And then the sterility is a good one, I think.
okay,
And the other ones, the endotoxin, apparently there can be issues like that, and
right.
it's good for the community to test it. Heavy metals for peptides, I still do think it's quite useless.
Yeah,
Then there is the LCMS screening for peptide contamination.
yes.
Well, it can be done, but there's there's a particle lab
Yeah.
that is making the LCMS screening very like the purity from LCMS is very different from HPLC.
Okay.
But if you build both of the tests specifically to prop up selling the one you're
Right.
trying to market, it's gonna work out like that. But in my opinion, the LCMS screening is not that valuable for people again.
Okay. Okay.
Because if there's something significant in the tests, and your HPLC method, which is the basic for peptides, is set up well enough, you're gonna see it. And there's also the pH measurement,
Yes.
which again I don't think carries too much value because if the pH is way off, the people are gonna notice it's gonna cause them some local reaction.
Yeah.
It's just gonna be red and itchy and everything on the point of. And TFA analysis, the analysis for TFA, trifluoroacetic acid in the
Yeah.
sample. That one might be useful because TFA, the peptides, the solid phase synthesis,
Yeah.
which is to use to make peptides synthetically, it uses a lot of trifluoroacetic acid. It's that is one inherent risk in this
Okay.
process, but we're not seeing it too much. Like trifluoroacetic acid is harmful for people,
Yeah.
but where it is the most problem is actual research peptides. Because
Yeah.
if you have a cell culture and
Right.
you're introducing some peptide to make research, the TFA can harm your cell line in your Petri dish
Okay.
significantly and screw up your research.
Yeah.
So the people Google up the research peptides and they see that you should really get the TFH under
Yeah.
control there because in human use, the TFA is not permitted either. But
Right.
if there is very minor TFA contamination, the TFA is spread in
Right.
a hundred kilo weight in person, it's not gonna be as much trouble as in a
Yeah.
cell
So
line.
for like actual
But
research, it could cause issues when you're using Petri dish, but typical research
yeah,
is a little bit different.
yeah, it shouldn't be in the peptides, and
Yeah.
we don't run the test too much. It's I don't I'm guessing, but let's say we run 100 of these in the past 2 years, and
Okay.
we've only seen one test that had TFA positive on that
Okay.
one. And there's a fentanyl presence analysis.
Yes.
Um,
I've seen that one.
yeah, I don't really believe that there's a chance of the peptides containing fentanyl,
Yeah.
but the people kept asking for it, so we're
Right.
we're just letting them to do that in a very affordable manner. And
Yeah.
there's a CHNS mass report. That's the elemental combustion machine. Like for the
Okay.
peptide, again, this is used a lot in the research. If you have a peptide, you can measure the content like you have HPLC, you compare it to the standard,
Right.
uh, or you can just burn it and measure the gases that come from the burning, and
Yeah.
it tells you how much exactly in the peptides, it's important how much exactly nitrogen is there. And from that, given in most of the peptides, if you have raw peptide powder or if you have vial
Yeah.
where the excipient is not an amino acid, then you can calculate the exact amount of peptide from the total nitrogen. So it's just like second confirmation of how much exactly of the peptide there is.
Okay.
So in
I think
some,
I've heard you talk
yeah,
about this a little bit before. It was one of my questions later, but if you had a brand new peptide, right? Like there was something going around like a bioglutide was, kind of a thing where it was like an IGF-1, it was the fourth agonist to the thing. Like how if somebody reaches out, hey, I think I have this new peptide. Like is that kind of I heard you talk about burning the peptides for like net content and stuff like that. Like how do you go about testing that? Or how would you accept that sample and say, "Hey, yeah, we can test for that."
yeah. That's if it's a peptide and we can get it reasonably pure, this is the go-to method.
Okay.
There's a multiple ways to go around it, but the CHNS is the most accurate. Then you have amino acid analysis, you have NMR, but this simple method of burning stuff up and measuring the output,
Yeah.
if your peptide is pure enough, which we will check with the LCMS and HPLC,
Right.
this works perfectly.
Okay.
And the bioglutide, I remember that one. It was like GLP-4. Again, you couldn't find the company, you couldn't find the registrations,
No.
you couldn't find anything. And then some people sent it to us, and it was just two GLPs mixed up or something like that.
Ah. Yeah, I think a lot
Uh,
of the study they took a lot of the studies from like two of the like the tirzepatide, clinical trials and stuff like that, and they took those and they're like, oh, we have this brand new thing, but it never
yeah,
came to
yeah, yeah.
fruition.
Yeah, someone asked me to read that, and I'm like, okay, that does sound like a whole lot of bullshit. Excuse my French. But
Yeah,
okay, you can send it in. We can just see what it is. But
right,
I'm betting my balls that, there's not this revolutionary thing happening that no one ever heard of, and
right.
just suddenly popped up somewhere.
Mm,
I've been around for a long while and I've seen it all, so I'm a natural skeptic.
yeah,
And then we received it from multiple sources, and it was always just some stuff mixed up from the commonly known peptides.
yeah. That makes a lot of sense overall. So, yeah, no, that's interesting. I knew you offered the extra testing, but it seems like, that first seven, that's kind of what people are like very focused on. But that's interesting for, I think sterility and heavy or still sterility and endotoxins, like you said, there's kind of a place that we've seen testing for it, but that heavy metals one is always like, let's just check a box kind of thing. At the end of, if people want to see
Yeah.
it, let's just check it off. And I think that's kind of the route you went.
I've been telling people for years, like, I don't see the reason why heavy metals ought to be in the peptides, but they kept asking for it anyway. So, well, who am I to tell them to not give us business?
Right.
So, if it makes someone sleep better, then I will happily accommodate it. And let's be honest, I'm going to be a lot more careful with statements like that because I thought the same about endotoxins.
Right. No, that's good.
So,
I mean, it's always good to kind of have an opinion and let that change over time as you see the data for it. Because at the end
yeah,
of the day, testing
exactly.
is just a data game of, I always tell people like kind of trust but verify even with these labs. Like, like we were talking about earlier, like do your research a little bit and then kind of, let that sway your opinion. The other thing I wanted to get into, which I kind of mentioned to you this before, kind of the whole testing process is very reliant on the research company or whoever's sending it in. It's like, however it was manufactured, whenever you get a batch of peptides, you send that, you grab samples from that batch and you send it over to a independent laboratory or a third party testing laboratory, and you assign a batch number and you test it and you kind of use that as your verification for that lot. This was kind of the shared COA thing that I saw from some companies where, maybe, and this mainly went for like research companies that I saw it where, two or three different research companies, maybe they did a group buy together, right? They bought a batch of, I don't know,
Yeah.
1,000. They shared that same batch. What was kind of the thing where they would maybe send a sample or two they were running, for a while it was just the basic test like you talked about, like the identification, net content, net purity. Is that true that it used to be like, $40 you'll kind of change the client name on the header for that? Or how did that whole process like come about? And how do you guys verify that, you know, the old if a second company reaches out or they want multiple COAs, let's say one person sends it in, they want four different COAs for four different client numbers. How does that work?
Oh, it's actually right among the additional services in the shop, like
Okay.
additional report. And it works exactly like this case. There's a lot of companies that has shared warehouses, or
Yeah.
there's a supplier that sells to the fixed customers,
Right.
and they just want the report. So we let them have this option,
Yeah.
and but it must be set up beforehand.
Okay.
Like they cannot order it afterwards, and
Right.
it must be the original source of the report. Like if someone contacts us like we want a copy of this report because we bought from the supplier,
Right.
well, nope, we're we're just not doing that.
The original
Uh,
client that sends it in has to request, hey, I need four COAs for these four people. It can't be anybody else that reaches out
yeah,
third
yeah,
party.
yeah,
Okay.
exactly. Like we're open about it. It's listed right
Yeah.
there on the
Yeah.
website, and it's something we've been dealing with for many years.
Right.
Like there's people owning multiple brands,
Yes.
aimed at a different clientele. There's the people with shared warehouse for particular products, or there's
Yeah.
one supplier, like a Chinese factory, they have fixed customers,
Right.
and they're just getting the same reports from them for them. And we're open about it, and
Yeah.
it's still we strongly believe that it's not really up to us to keep the vendors honest. It's up to the
Right.
community. That's why we strongly encourage the group testings, which are very painful for us because well, now instead of one payment, you have to deal with 200 of them.
Right.
Yeah, and we don't charge them any extra for that.
Hmm.
Or you have to, or we the conformity testing. It's an add loss for us.
Yeah.
So, but we try to do a share of the work for the
Yeah.
community. Uh,
Yeah, I think that's the right way to go about it in general because I've heard a lot of people try to discredit it, but it makes sense if it's coming from I think that we put so much there has to be so much trust in the actual either research company or whoever, is the manufacturer of the thing to properly split up the batches as they were manufactured or as they kind of received them and you know that from that point forward, as long as like on your guys' end, the main person who sent that out for testing, they're the ones that have to kind of request the report. Um,
yeah,
some people try to like discredit that, but I think that's the right way to go about it. That's not on you guys to hold them accountable. It's like you said, it's a whole community thing to keep that going.
yeah, and I mean this why the people like nobody's it's still the vendor, the seller, they have the report, and still they could send something else entirely for the
Right,
testing and sell something else. It's still for the community to check up whether what they've gotten fits the report the vendor has.
for sure.
So I don't see the this additional report sort of thing
Yeah.
compromises this general idea.
No,
It's
I
always
agree.
been about the community, and I've always supported the testing communities and group testings and everything.
Yeah.
And the people know with being around for so long, and the people they're often sending non-blind samples like a vendor has a particle badge listed
Right.
and someone buys it and sends it completely labeled so we know exactly what it is,
Yeah.
but the people notice that it's not coming, they're not receiving the same numbers if something is icky, or a
Right.
lot of clients, a lot of groups, they do this thing of intentionally mislabeling the samples just to
Yeah. Try
check
to
up on
trick you
us.
out. Right.
Yeah, and it's quite it's quite funny that many of the testing labs they fail this
Right.
simple test. They just put out a report with
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 whatever they
results
said it
fitting.
was. Like you could send
Yeah.
retatrutide and you could send Retta labeled as tirzepatide and it'll come back as tirzepatide.
Yep. Yep. And the testing groups they notice they run these lab comparison tests, and I'm very happy to say the biggest ones they're using us still after all
Yeah.
these comparison tests. So I think that's kind of telling, and I'm really happy about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, no, as long as you're doing it right every time and you don't, I guess the proof is in the pudding when, every time it comes back and it's the right thing. So that you guys have always done a good job with that. I think that's why you've been around so long. You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah.
and then,
It's not to
and
s-
then,
it's not to
yeah,
say we don't screw up stuff, but it
right.
happens just if you sort of sheer amount of mail we're getting in every day, mistakes happen. But I think we're keeping the mistakes at a such low level,
Yeah.
like maybe one or two samples per 1,000,
Hmm.
uh, uh, that I'm really happy about it. It's impossible to keep everything perfect. Anyone who
Right.
claims so is lying or selling something.
Yeah.
But I actually have a lot of friends who work in the medical testing labs, and they're
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, well, for us the permitted level of major mistakes is like 15%. And like, what?
15.
Are you
Wow.
kidding me? Are
Yeah.
you kidding me? Well, if it comes weird when they just order another test, okay.
Right. Yeah, actually, that was a follow-up question I had for sterility on that aspect. Is it possible, I guess, for other labs, or have you seen it where sterility, technically there can be, bacteria introduced in the laboratory. I know you guys have, safety protocols and stuff like that, but is there a possibility that, the lab introduces some bacteria that wasn't actually in the vial and then it goes on to fail sterility testing? Because I know some labs offer like, oh, if it fails sterility, we'll just test it again because there could be a mistake on our end. I've seen that before.
Jesus Christ. I mean,
Yeah.
well, we have the laminar flow hood
Yeah.
that's sterilized with the UVC. We have a clean room. Uh, the most important thing is, of course, a skilled employee doing that, and we have
Yeah.
our best doing that. And then we do have swaps of the environment. Like if something, if we have, when you are doing sterility tests, you need to check the medium, you need to check the petri dish whether it's clear. So if something
Yeah.
grows by itself on the stuff you use, then your stuff is contaminated.
Right.
Then you need to confirm that you have uh, stuff that the stuff can actually grow in your petri dish. Like you have one that you contaminate intentionally, and it should grow because if it doesn't grow, then everything would be
Doesn't
negative,
grow.
even if it's
Yeah.
not true. And then we also add environmental ones when we
Mhm.
use swabs from the environment. And even in completely clean laminar flow hood, like the strictest specifications there are, even if
Right.
it's been disinfected with the UVC and alcohol and everything we use, there's after swabbing, there's still gonna be something there. It's just not going to be flying around and contaminating your samples. But if you swap the ceramic tiles, it's gonna be there.
Right.
And we do these swaps. And for example, if there's extremely minor contamination of our sample and it's growing exactly the same as our environmental swab,
Right.
uh, it happened a couple of times. What we do is to have it. I'm not sure how to pronounce it in English. Typezide. Uh,
Okay.
okay, I have no idea how to pronounce it. Like we compare the microbe growing in our swab and in the
Okay.
petri dish. And if
Yeah.
it's exactly the same thing, if everything fits, then we still might claim it's negative,
Okay.
which is not the proper which is not the proper way
Right.
to do it, but we're not running the US pharmacopoeia type of
Right.
test because that requires you to have a lot of samples.
Right.
But if we're dealing just with one or two vials, then we don't have the option
For
to
sure.
run a statistic, which is what you do in the regular sterility testing according to USP, and we just
Yeah.
don't have the option. Like nobody's sending you 3% of all the vials in the batch for this
Oh yeah.
testing.
Well, yeah. I,
And yeah, and if you only have one vial for the sterility test, well, you need to test it entirely
right.
because due to content. So once the test is run, there's no second guessing, there's no retesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So
So
so for those tests, there's three that you use for like conformity if they send in three for like the variance testing between, like the net amounts. And then is it a separate one for endotoxins, a separate one for sterility, and a separate one for heavy metals? Is that like
yeah,
six total samples for, or if you
we
tested
like
all of
that.
those? Yeah.
But we can do we prefer two tests for sterility. One we use for the molds and
Yeah.
stuff like that. One we use for the bacteria,
Mhm.
and for endotoxin we like a separate one too. But we can also do if we get three tests for variance testing.
Yeah.
Uh, we dissolve them in sterile
Yep.
water,
Yep.
and we can take a tiny aliquot, like you take a tiny part, because for the
Hmm.
actual test, for the content, we use less than 1 microliter of
Gotcha.
the actual sample.
Okay.
So it's not really affecting the amount used for the sterility testing.
Right.
So we can run these tests, but it's a lot more work. You have to be extra careful to not contaminate the samples when you're taking the part off for the other tests. So we just prefer to have a separate vial for
For
every
all the,
test.
yeah.
Yeah.
That,
And but for heavy metals, you don't need to be extra careful. Like you can just dissolve it. You take a small part for the test on the HPLC, the regular one,
yeah.
even the LCMS, etc., the fentanyl pH. You're not spending the sample, and then you can just put it into the heavy metal testing machine, and basically your sample loss is still completely negligible.
Okay.
So
Yeah. So
mm,
separate's preferred, but you can kind of make it work for some of those with the
yeah,
same sample. So you just
but
have to be careful.
yeah, it's a lot of pain for my employees.
Yeah.
We hate that. We despise that.
Yeah.
We advise people to never ever do that because it also delays their tests because it
Right.
has to wait for a specific order of stuff to happen, unlike when we get a sample for each vial.
Right.
But we can do it. We just hate it, and the clients they hate it too because everything takes much longer than it would take otherwise.
Okay. And the last thing we'll touch on directly on the testing, I actually had somebody request this because some labs put everything. I know you guys do separate COAs, like you have, the net content, net purity identification all on one, and then the second page is typically those additional tests, or it might go down. I've seen, pictures that you guys take of the vials if they like request that, they'll put it on there. Have you ever considered condensing that down just into one page and getting everything on that single page? Because I know a lot of either research companies or stuff, they'll upload that as a COA to their like QR codes, they can match it up. But I've had people request one page for that. Have you ever thought about that, or is it just not something you guys would do?
We were considering updating our report format because the one
Uh,
we use had been around for well over 10 years now, and the situation changed up a lot between then and
yes.
now. But I'm gonna be honest, right now we're focusing on not collapsing under the sheer amount of samples
Yeah.
because we're getting 3 times as many samples as we were a year ago.
Yeah.
So pretty much all our
All the resources are focused on that.
uh, yeah, just taking up new people, teaching them, expanding more. We've gotten our own NMR machine, which is quite an expensive and difficult piece of hardware, and we have, I think, over 10 HPLCs running over
Wow.
here. It's
Wow.
just we're quite busy with scaling, and we focus less on changing the stuff that's, not urgent.
Yes.
We
Yeah. No, I get that for sure. And then I guess because I've heard this from somebody, but there's a lot of rumors that circulate in the research space. Have you ever considered expanding to like a US laboratory, like a Janoshik kind of brand from that perspective of like scaling out this way, or are you more focused on just keeping it kind of locked down and, I guess you scaled the right way because you don't make many mistakes and stuff. So are you just kind of focused on keeping it where it is?
Yeah, it's really difficult to scale up at this speed while keeping the number of issues down
Right.
because well, we can only teach so many people at once. I mean,
For sure.
this company would run perfectly if I could do everything myself because I have a decade and a half of experience, but it's not working like that.
Yeah.
So we're just focusing on the stuff here now, but we're in the talks of actually expanding into the US. But it's a rather difficult process because there's a lot of requirements. Like if we open the Janoschik US, there's not many labs that could handle receiving thousands of samples a month.
Right.
Like we have 40 employees here, and 50% of our business from the US got redirected somewhere there.
Right.
Plus, taking more of the market share in the US. Uh, there's not many labs which could handle that,
Yeah.
and it would be our name at the stake.
Right.
So that sort of limits it to just the labs of medium to big size.
Right,
to be handled. Because if the lab like that is existing for cooperation like that, they probably have their own stuff to work on. So
for sure.
you would need really a massive lab of 100 people, for example, to just deal
Yeah.
with this.
Oh, I can imagine how many, US companies would just switch to the Janoshik US side just because obviously, delivery time and, having a US lab, but that's completely understandable. Something that's
Yeah,
gonna take time for sure.
yeah, it's a very difficult matter, and I would be putting my name at the stake,
Right.
which I have a difficult time just keeping it running over here,
No,
where
for
I
sure.
am, and I cannot imagine starting a whole new company in the States right now.
Yeah. Not to
What
mention
we're
even the
trying to do,
paperwork that would go with that, because, you said the paperwork just to get it where it is currently, you said that takes up over like half the time, but the US would be another, big undertaking to do that.
yeah, I mean, we wouldn't be able to do a lot of stuff we can do here due to
Right.
to the licenses we have here. Uh, able to touch anabolics, AGH, ACG. So I think many of the companies would still use our current location.
Hmm.
If it's something that's scheduled in the US, just the testing labs that test stuff like this, they're risking there,
Like,
where the DA is quite about that, and if the FDA too. So once they get a gist of this, there's gonna be a lot of blood on the streets, to say that way.
right, right.
But
Yeah.
we're right now I'm in a talk with with one mid-sized lab on the West Coast,
Right.
but what we're doing also is sending the samples from the US to Czechia to make it easier.
Gotcha.
But it's a lot of legal work to be
Yeah.
able to receive, for example, USPS mail.
Okay.
But if we were able to receive USPS envelope for $5 and we have it here in a week,
Yeah.
then at that point, having separate location in the States, it's not feasible anymore.
Yeah. What does that look like right now for, I know you said you're kind of expanding and everything. What does it look like for a typical turnaround time if someone were to send you a sample? Like once it arrives at your, I know it's variable depending on volume, but what's kind of the average turnaround time right now?
Right now, for most of the samples, it's like 2 or 3 working days.
Okay.
So if it arrives to lab on Monday morning, you have a good chance of having it by Wednesday.
Okay. Yeah. That
Of
makes
course, it
sense.
depends on the tests. Like if it's the basic tests and the routine, for example, the endotoxins, we usually do them 2 times a week. So if you just exactly miss the window, it might take a couple more working days. But
Yeah.
we also offer something called rush service,
Yeah.
which basically means we charge double, but
Yeah.
usually you get the results within 24 hours
Okay.
of us receiving them.
Gotcha.
So
Do you do like do you wait if somebody put tax on that 14-day sterility test, right? You're waiting for it to pass. Do they get that COA at day 14 or do they get the initial results first?
they get the results for the other tests right
Yeah,
as they are, and for the sterility, the rush just means it gets processed the same day.
right.
Because we don't do sterility every day too, we do it in
Yeah,
batches. So, for example, we
makes
do
sense.
it, I think right now every Friday.
Okay.
So, but if you send in rush and it arrives on Monday, we just process it. And but you're still not getting the negative results, any sooner than 14 days.
Right. That's the way to do it. Yeah. So, okay, this is going a little bit more into this is more opinion based, but I've seen you guys do a lot of degradation studies and stuff like that with, different samples and different blends. You do them like kind of intermittently when the company requests them. But just some random community questions. Like if you have, let's just say you have a blend, like a common one, I'm sure you see a lot is like the glow blend, like BPC, TB500, and GHK-Cu. From kind of everything you've seen, that blend lyophilized together from a manufacturer, right? They send it in for testing
Yeah.
and stuff like that. Have you seen different Or would you think there'd be different degradation over time, over the course of like a month? Because I know, when that's lyophilized together, that's going to have a set pH value, and then you're going to reconstitute it. It'll degrade over time. A lot of researchers ask, if they were to blend that together, they take three separate vials, like individual vials, so like, regular BPC, regular TB500, and a regular GHK-Cu. They mix that all into a sterile vial themselves. Do you think that's going to degrade a little bit quicker or cause potential issues compared to a lyophilized version? That's one
I
blend.
don't think, I honestly don't think so.
Okay.
But it's always better to keep stuff separate. Like when you
Yes.
have medicines that are mixed in, the regulators, the government agencies are very careful about that, and I think they
Mhm.
have a couple good reasons. And for
Yeah.
example, if one of the vials turns out bad, then by mixing it, we've contaminated them all. But it depends on the risk assessment of everyone involved. But I don't see how it could cause any issues. We tested degradation in glow and the mixes, and it doesn't appear to be running any different than the peptides themselves separately.
Okay.
So I know
Okay.
I don't see any particular issue with that one.
Um, and then kind of going back to kind of what you see failure rates on, like if you could kind of go over like the main tests, like what do you see as the biggest issues when you're actually testing these peptides? Do you see the wrong peptide come through that's labeled? Do you see a failure? You said you haven't seen much endotoxins or, heavy metal failures, but what are like the biggest red flags when it comes to testing that you see stuff come off, overfill, underfill, stuff like that.
Well, the biggest issue is always the wrong peptide in there and the wrong dose.
Okay.
The most dangerous stuff we've seen was we haven't seen it in a while, but we've seen it a couple of times. The Ozempic pens. There's an insulin
Okay.
that has a very similar looking pen, and we saw some smart ass just change it up the label. So that was quite dangerous. We've reported that too, and it
Yeah.
made it into some news in the Europe.
Okay.
Uh, but well, we've seen all sorts of stuff. Not always something malicious. Um,
Yeah.
like for example, bioglutide was a couple of GLPs and maybe cagranate or however it's pronounced,
Yeah.
mixed up, and that was someone trying to
Right.
maliciously pass it as something revolutionary. But we've
Right.
also seen a lot of stupid stuff like vials labeled as M at a vendor, and they sell it as sermorelin, but it turns out to be semaglutide. It's a lot of stupid mistakes like this. Like this is a high volume business, high profit, nobody's caring. It's too much.
Right.
Everyone just wants to move the product to make money fast. So there's a lot of stupid stuff like this happening.
Okay. And do you see like typically when you see those like big red flags, does it kind of come in waves from like the same, people sending them in? Like when you see one thing off, you kind of see let's say I'm talking about the bigger clients that send maybe 20, 30 samples to you. Maybe it's a company, maybe it's a supplier. Does that typically come in waves or are they kind of like one-off things here and there?
Well, we also see one of things here and there, but typically it's in the waves, really. When there were big busts in China
Yeah.
a while ago, we've seen a lot of terrible products coming out of China. No content, no product content, different product content, the dosages all over the out of whack, terrible purities until people found new reliable suppliers again.
Right.
La- so we could see everything in this market shakes a bit, shakes out the reliable manufacturers and vendors, and
Yeah.
then we see the influx of terrible stuff coming to the market.
Yeah.
It's,
Kind of.
it's it's more of a rule of a thumb now.
Yeah, kind of like well, like kind of like you mentioned with the tirzepatide. Do you see like when there's a lot of failures and stuff like that with that high like endotoxins that come in? Do just more and more people kind of send you the same batch when that stuff happens? Like kind of independent researchers or like group tests, or is it more you just like kind of see it
Yeah,
and they just ditch the batch?
Like we had like five terrible results for endotoxin for tirzepatide, orange top,
Yeah,
in the past week and a half or 2 weeks, and I suspect it's all the same batch of stuff.
right.
So yeah,
That makes
it's
sense.
it's like that.
That makes sense. And then one other question that somebody had, because you said you've tested like the stuff that comes in the pens versus like the multi-use vials. Do you see any, and I guess kind of like what you said with like the sterile, keeping everything sterile, there shouldn't really be an issue. Do you see any benefit to having like a pen where the cartridge is only getting, you're filling it one time versus a multi-use vial where you're constantly puncturing it for, any bacteria or like sterility failures down the line? Do you see any kind of issues there?
Well, I'm not really familiar with the exact process there, so I don't dare to have much of an opinion on that.
Okay. Yeah.
Uh, but just generally from the testing, from what I've seen, the cartridges they tend to have more issues than the regular vials
Okay.
with quality.
Okay.
It's a general rule
Interesting.
of thumb. The more rare the product is, the form, the vial, the cartridge, or for example, just the type of peptide. If it's something exotic, the
Yeah.
likelihood of there something being wrong with it compared to the regular stuff, it grows exponentially.
Gotcha.
That's just something that's been a rule of thumb for me for many, many years, and it
Yeah.
still works like that.
Still pretty standard. Yeah, that's interesting because yeah, typically the pens are something unique, and now they're even popping up on the research side where you can kind of like fill your own peptide pens. So that's an interesting that's an interesting way to go down. Um, a little bit more on the, I guess, personal side, if you're okay with sharing. I think you've been asked before, but peptide wise, have you kind of have you like dabbled into that world since kind of the last interview? Like, what are your kind of, if you have any peptides that you run, like what are the current ones?
Oh, like I said, in Czechia, all of them are scheduled.
Okay.
So it's the same crime as using or dealing with anabolic steroids here. And I think it would be a really bad look for the company.
No, for sure.
Especially we have to keep up relations with the customs and various government agencies like there's supervising agency we got the license from. So I prefer to keep the relations all good
Yeah.
between us.
No, no, that makes 100% sense. Um, and then kind of, I guess, based on, everything that you're seeing volume wise from either research companies, people sending you and stuff, is there anything that you would want to see more from either companies sending in? It could be like little nitpick things, like you said, with, the endotoxins and heavy metals having, separate vials for everything. Is there anything that, just kind of makes your life a pain that you'd rather see going forward?
Oh, we would love people to follow the instructions we send
Yeah.
them. That would be great if everyone just did that,
Yeah.
because that's taking up so much of our time. It's completely insane. Just people
Yeah.
not following the direction, especially bold and twice underlined,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we have to deal with the aftermath.
No, for sure. Do you I'm sure you have employees that just work with like contacting the clients and getting,
Oh
those
yeah,
COAs out and stuff like that. What is
exactly.
I'm curious, what is the breakdown, if like what is the breakdown work through? Because you kind of said you have a bunch of people doing, filing all the paperwork, doing regulatory, the people in the lab versus, maybe the people that are just doing the customer support and handling the COAs and stuff like that. How does that breakdown look?
Well, a lot of our systems are automated. We're IT heavy company
Yeah.
because we do send thousands of emails a day. A lot of them are automated. And there's 10 people just dealing with the emails with the clients.
Yeah.
The orders are handled either by them or the eShop. We have one person just dedicated on dealing with the tickets.
Okay.
Soon there will be two. Just the content of the package doesn't fit what the client said he sent, and there's a sort of issue that we have a dedicated person to deal with. We have three people now just dealing with the customs paperwork.
Wow.
we have an HR, and we have one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine. We have nine people doing the analytical work, the chemists.
Yeah.
And then we have roughly 10 people working in the lab, like the people unpacking the samples,
Yeah.
the preparing the samples, bringing the samples to the machines, and then the nine people are dealing with what the machines give us the results and processing them and filling in the
Wow.
reports and everything.
Wow. That's insane. Hey, did you ever picture it getting, obviously like when you started, as it was scaling, maybe you had an idea, but did you ever picture it getting to this point? Like, especially like I know you said in the beginning of the interview you were processing, maybe $6,000 or $7,000 of just like samples and stuff like that. Do you ever picture it would grow to this size?
Oh, no, not at all. I have a friend from 15 years ago,
Yeah.
and roughly 12 or so years ago, he joked like, "Hey man, maybe someday you will be even making $10,000 a month." And I was like, "Okay, stop kidding, man."
Yeah.
Uh, I mean, back at the time, the average wage when I was from was like $800. So
Yeah.
just the number was unimaginable for me.
That's
And
like looking at a COA or not using Janoshik, what are some questions they should ask to that laboratory to kind of be the most confident that they're offering like adequate results? Like, is there any like what are some questions that you would ask personally, just so kind of everybody can stay on the safer side and just stay educated?
while I would, every time I work with a company, and we have a lot of business ties, I always check out the company registration.
Yeah,
Every country, every civilized country in the world has a public company register. You
yeah,
can tell who owns it, how long is the company around. I mean, if the lab is around for 3 months and the guy owning it is a homeless person, we've seen that too.
yeah,
There's obvious question on how trustable the company is, or if the company even exists. I mean, that alone eliminates half of the labs or more in this field,
yeah,
because it's incredibly easy to make a website and create a fake lab to prop up your own brand of what you're selling. And this has been commonplace in the anabolic steroids world. We've seen it 15 years ago, we're seeing it now.
right.
The vendors, the manufacturers are just making up their own testing labs because it's cheaper, especially with the AI.
Oh yeah.
It's taking just minutes now.
I'm a software engineer, so that's where my like background comes from. So I know now with, I'm using more AI in, my like day to day than I am like actually coding stuff. So I can, you can spin up a testing lab website in 2 minutes. It's not difficult. So,
Yeah,
if people
exactly.
haven't seen it, it's crazy.
I made a living with programming a decade ago. I
Right.
still, most of our systems are made by me personally.
Yeah.
And I know how easy it is. And if the company doesn't exist or if it's been around for months, that's an obvious red flag. And then I would obviously would want to see their lab. Like
Yeah.
you see labs and they offer all the tests possible and endotoxin sterility, and then you find out they don't have a flow hood even.
Yeah.
So I wonder how they're running the tests and how exactly are all those tests always coming back perfect.
They're passing every
Uh,
time. Yeah.
yeah. That would be something I would like to hear the question for. And it's always good to see who are the people working at the lab too.
Right.
Uh, it's a lot of keeping the machines up and running reliably. It's not an easy task.
Yeah.
We have a couple of PhDs there, and we have, I think, uh, at least 15 or maybe 20 people over here have a master's degree in something.
Wow.
It's not an easy task, at least a master's degree. So it's not an easy task to keep this running. So we've seen labs that have a high schooler running them. Like the guy
Yeah.
finished high school and nothing else when you Google it up,
Right.
and he claims to run a lab that can do a variety of tests so wide. We need to have 9 different people running them.
Right. Right.
It just doesn't seem quite plausible for me. So
Yeah.
I would advise people to just be careful and ask questions and see if those questions can be answered.
Yeah.
Because if I found that enough being honest and open about everything and sharing, that's why we always invite people to see. It's if it's really difficult to have people come in randomly, like we need them
Yeah.
to announce themselves beforehand so that we're ready.
Right.
But you cannot fake running proper running lab with all the precautions and all the proper processes 20 times a year for the
Right.
people coming in. You can fake it on the internet, that's easy one, but it's difficult to uh, do it in person. So
Right.
we're just trying to live by what I'm preaching here now, like to be as open and sharing with the people as possible,
Yeah.
because that's the only way they can. In my That's the what I would want from the lab, to trust it. I
Hmm.
would want to know about the corporate and personal and equipment, everything as much as I can.
Yeah. And I think the average person, I want them to walk away from this and have a, basic understanding of what they should be looking for and what the most value is from, and not just trusting things blindly. Like I said, you guys have been doing it with your COA database for verification. I always verify your COAs, always verify the labs, and that's the best thing you can kind of do. The community keeps everyone honest in that case, I guess. So, yeah, I'll end
Okay,
this off here, but yeah, I greatly appreciate it. Thank you.
it's been a pleasure.